So thank you everyone for showing up to our 2016 Technology Roundtable for Hotel Management Magazine. I'd like to thank our sponsor, the Rainmaker Group, for making this possible. And I'd like to start this by going around the table. I'm going to start on this side and maybe talk about, introduce yourself first of all, then maybe talk about one technology innovation you're trying to accomplish this year, or what you've been rolling out this year. Just go into that a little bit if possible. So can we start?
Absolutely. My name is Eric Tegler. I'm the Senior Vice President of Application Development and Enterprise Architecture for Marriott International. So I'm accountable for all of our software applications globally and the technology strategy for the company. Marriott obviously is continuing to try to be an innovator in the market. We are actually in process of rolling out a number of very interesting things, many of which are common across a lot of our companies. We're obviously in process of testing a lot of the digital entry features. We've got them live in several hotels, and we think they're very exciting. We've released two-way chat right with the guests through our mobile app, so that guests can request towels and shampoo and engage directly with the hotel staff through their mobile phone in a chat session. That's in about 500 hotels right now and rolling out broader. So we believe that there's a lot of opportunity there to continue to use technology to engage the guest at different points through a digital mechanism that didn't exist before. And we want our continue to try to find that right balance between how do we employ technology to essentially remove the friction and make the guest stay more easy for them and facilitate the experience they want, but yet still provide the type of personal touch that Marriott has been known for, and be able to find that right balance.
Vivek Shava, I'm CIO of La Quinta, and like Marriott, being a hospitality company, obviously the focus is on the guest experience. That's the primary area of innovation that we are also looking at. So this year we have obviously many initiatives, but the focus is on improving the guest experience for our most loyal customers. We're relaunching many features of our loyalty program this year, and a lot of associated innovation that goes along with it, whether it's the mobile experience or the experience on our desktop. There's a lot of new versions of all our platforms, our digital platforms as they relate to customer experience. They're all in the works and coming out through multiple releases through the year.
Good afternoon, my name is Chris Green. I'm the Chief Operating Officer of Chesapeake Hospitality. We're a third-party operator of vertical chain scale hotels all across the chain scales. For us, and for me on the operations side, really this year looking at what we can do to improve performance for our third-party hotels along with the guest experience. So we've been working hard on the marketing side with location-based marketing, proximity-based marketing in one of our larger assets in Atlanta. And then on system side, RFID and also Internet of Things, connected devices in our back-of-house systems to make sure that we are efficient. Right now, laundry is a big space for us, and connected laundries through our cloud-based systems to enhance performance, make sure we're not overspending on energy. There's just a broad spectrum of processes that we're working on to drive efficiencies in hotels.
My name's Ellie. I'm hosting this. I'm Associate Editor for Hotel Management Magazine. I focus mostly on operations, design, technology, kind of a broad, but cover all of that. So.
Hi, I'm Vikram Singh. I'm with Rainmaker, and those of you who've not heard of Rainmaker before, it's one of the premier RMS providers with which over 200 years of PhDs and doctors working in it. So that's so revenue management is one side of things. I think one of the biggest things that Rainmaker is trying to do this year, and I am on board with them, is to integrate revenue management with marketing, because that is where the silos are now starting to hurt, where revenue management is being done, and then marketing is just doing the follow-up on it. So for this year, a couple of really exciting things that we are going to roll out is demand management for our clients. So if you are using our revenue management system, irrespective of who your marketing company is or your agency is, we will be able to give you actionable insights and data points that you could just take to market and not waste a lot of time digging for it, because we see it. We'll see it from both sides. So we are trying to be the first full circle RMS provider that just not gives you the rates. Rates and pricing is just only thing that a lot of people talk about, but now it's the full circle.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Jim Lamb, Chief Information Officer for Interstate Hotels, third-party management space. We have a number of initiatives that are underway this year, but most of them do tie back into leveraging our previous efforts in moving to the cloud, deploying mobile functionality in an effort to drive effectiveness and efficiency at the properties.
Good morning, I'm Rick Day. I am one of the co-founders of Real Hospitality Group and serve as the Vice President of Marketing for the company, and also a consultant role for IT as we've grown over the last 5 years. Our initiatives really, because of the multiple brands that we operate, is trying to find the best ways to watch and monitor the properties and keep them on track with. And some of our initiatives this year are really about in-stay applications and customer touch points, and trying to understand all of the different avenues the brands have rolled out, and then how we can interface that from our level because of the guest experience factor and the correlation to the ROI at the properties when you have effective plans in place.
All right, well then we're going to get started on some of these questions. There's no order to this, so if you have something to add, just jump right in. But my first question is, technology, it's more costly to invest in it than it is to it's more costly than ever to invest in. So how do you determine what you're going to invest in, where you put it in your hotels? Is there a priority to that in any way?
I mean, what's going to have the largest impact on the guest is the biggest ROI for the guests, right? So even though I think technology is expensive to invest in, it's more expensive if you don't. I mean, there's obvious demand changes when you have a quality asset that delivers on the technology side, and one across the street that does not. So if you're not fully prepared to invest on that side, you probably can go an extra couple years on your case goods, but you've got to be at the front edge of whether it's your Wi-Fi capabilities, your connectivity in the guest room. You've got to be at the edge of that space. That's the number one guest driver right now for guest satisfaction is internet speed. It's not the bed, it's internet speed. So it's really where you're allocating your dollars, and I think you're behind. You're spending money not wisely if you're not putting it towards technology.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And I think it's with the evolution of, like we're all aware of the rapidly evolving space of technology, right? They call it the using acceleration of the Moore's law is happening, and with all that, and there's a whole profusion of variety of technologies as well. A lot of startups, a lot of companies, a lot of innovation happening, and what we are seeing is that people are getting, even very smart business leaders, when faced with all these choices, are having a difficult time picking, what should we invest in, what's the right, and what we are seeing, from the IT side, very close partnerships. I mean, it's just happening naturally, especially between marketing and operations, just because people are looking for collective group thinking to make some of these decisions because of the variety of options out there, and the investment is also high in some cases. So biggest challenge is what to pick out of all of these options, and as we've seen a lot of benefits. We actually directly engage customers. We have regular innovation workshops with these cross-functional teams. We even engage real customers that come in physically to those workshops. We even talk to places like, if you were at the Singularity University, these people are looking really out there on emerging technologies. So we kind of have some speakers from there come in and talk to us. So it's a pretty interesting space and evolving, and yeah.
It's incredible when you look at the rate of change for technology. I think we're almost vertical right now.
Yeah.
Right? So sorting through that is almost an impossible task. So it's actually one of our operating philosophies from an IT perspective is to focus on business-driven innovation, right? To actively focus on the things that are relevant and meaningful to our folks, whether it's in back office functional areas or out at the properties. What are the things that we should be focused on to help them deliver services to our guests or for our owners in a more effective and efficient manner? So ultimately it comes back to the things that are going to make a difference, move the needle, hopefully from a guest satisfaction survey, but at the same time allow our folks not to be tied up with technology, but focusing their time delivering services to our guests.
And I think one of the challenges that is opposed, business may not, if the business leaders making those decisions in the field, let's say, are not aware of what technology can be doing for them.
Right.
There's a learning process that you need to infuse that knowledge in them. It's just sheer knowledge, and without that, you could be driven the wrong path with someone who isn't aware, and that's why that whole team spirit, collaboration, and knowledge sharing is very critical.
Just as you
Yeah.
said, the technology continues to grow so rapidly. Everything is also collecting data, and it feels like that is, just one of the major functions of everything that we invest in right now. So, even door locks are collecting data. So, how do you break down all of that data and make it relevant and not overwhelm yourself with it?
Well, I think again, this is a place where we're everybody I think is suffering from the exact same challenges around. There's just much more information that kind of overwhelms traditional technology paradigms around information. But there's a lot of companies that have been out on the bleeding edge that have solved a lot of problems here that have paved the way for us to really think about how do we embrace big data in ways that perhaps we didn't. And so obviously we look to a lot of the industry leaders that are crunching massive amounts of data in real time. And we are working with them, working with their technology partners and vendors, and specifically this is one of those areas where this is not unique to hospitality, and so therefore lessons can be learned across different verticals around this. And so we look at retail, and we look at financial services, we look at social media, and those companies have been pushing on the data boundaries for much longer than our industry has. And so there's a lot of lessons that we have learned from them to be able to say, how do we do big data? So that we don't trip over all the same challenges that they did. We want to learn from them and hopefully be a little bit more efficient as we go through our journey.
And we see it, and I love this whole big data thought process, especially from the marketing side. It's something that we've really embraced this past year. We ran into, and I'm sure aware of this, we ran into some thought processes where we were going to just basically vacate all of our traditional marketing budget and go with big data aggregation, seeking out guests that were cheaper to acquire and were more likely to book at our hotels. And we've had some real success. We've testing a plan down in Atlanta at a major hotel down in Atlanta, and we've seen really on our 17 to 1 ROIs on our investment dollars there compared to traditional ROIs, which are very high. And we're getting guests that we know have not only a spend related to the room, but related to F&B, that are more likely to not only come once, but to return. And it's lowered our marketing costs and driven higher ADRs and higher guest satisfaction because they're coming to a hotel that they already, without knowing, have predetermined they will like.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a little, on one side it's exciting, and the other side it's a little scary that we can look-alike market. So these people have never heard of our hotel, but they look alike some of our guests. And through data aggregation, IP aggregation,
Mm-hmm.
we know they're just like our guests. So we can go directly to them where they sit.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think it's absolutely critical for us to, there's a phrase that we use, which is let's put the hospitality back in hospitality. Because unfortunately a lot of our technology, just because of the scale of our industry, is driven towards a more transactional mindset.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Let's process the reservation, let's price the room product, let's check the guest in, and we are looking to how do we essentially leverage data at scale to essentially re-engage the guests in a more personal manner and move away from the transactional focus that frankly I think our systems have just gravitated towards for so many years. And I think big data is the way that will happen. Ultimately, how do you personalize at scale? And the only answer to that we see is you have to know a lot about your guests to be able to ensure that you're providing the right experience at the right time and at the right place. And that means we need to know a lot more than we do today.
And there are two streams within the big data analytics. One is analytics offline. You get all this data, all this number crunching, can create and get insights into your customer behavior for long-term planning. And then what's more interesting to me is real-time analytics. So number crunching, big data, and then being able to feed it into real-time systems that are interacting with the customer, whether it's or our staff. Someone tweeted something negative about your hotel, and you're able to number crunch that in near real time, feed it back to the staff so they're aware. I mean, it can get a little creepy too at some point, but that technology exists today. I mean, one can do it if you get get the right brains together and get to that.
Yeah, the technology
Yeah.
definitely exists
Yeah.
because one of the things with Rainmaker, with the RMS system, you could use an RMS system just to do pricing, right? Just get your rates right so you make the sale. But one of the things that Rainmaker does very different than a lot of the other RMS systems out there is calculate the total guest value, where you're not just looking at the transaction, like you said, check in, check out, how much money done. So they're looking at their food and beverage spend. They're looking at the patterns that they are spending on meetings, even spending money anywhere, even every dollar that comes out. Who was that person? What did they book? And then all of that data is basically used to assign a dollar value to every guest. So, he might have booked a $99 room, but he spends $500 at your food and beverage outlet. So he's probably worth more than the $139 a night guide, just to give you like an example. So that is the power of big data, is figuring out how much is they're willing to pay. I know it's a little creepy, but that's what it does. It tells you exactly what the value of this guy who's checking into your front desk is beyond just rooms. And might not be applicable to just smaller properties, but the bigger hotels, the independent, anywhere where there's a spa or a casino or any of those things, then the total value comes into play there.
I think it's really instructive that Marriott went outside to Eric to pursue other industries, because I think we can get a little too, I'm 26 years in hospitality, so we can get a little too inwardly focused. And to your point, is really sifting through when we're being sold these processes as hotel operators is I can talk to Rainmaker, and then the next day I talk to company X, and you've got to have the right people to understand what's the benefit to the company, because otherwise you make a bad decision and you're married to company X and it wasn't the best solution. I can't tell you how many times I've been in a sales presentation and I'm like, this is great, and then the next day, wow, this is a little bit better. It's very difficult with the way technologies are emerging. I mean, if you're straight up, somebody's always on that front edge, and then how do you get on the edge and not get passed by? And that's keeps me awake at night.
You're always going through a constant evaluation, and then you've made an investment, and then the next thing you know, you have more equipment, hardware, different hardware, mobile hardware, and the way you approach it. But to your point earlier about the marketing, I think reinventing the marketing budget, our industry is really trying to move, but it's almost reactive.
It is.
So it's challenging for us because you really need to kind of scrap the old and then take a fresh look at the whole thing. And all of the engagement software and the data that you're using really has to be triggered now with the trend to get away from third parties and really drive traffic back to use the transactional data, but also the type of customer base you're looking for, and do the retargeting and do all the things you can to drive the traffic back to the cheaper channels at the same time.
I think we also have to challenge ourselves on the perception of the creepiness factor. I live in a small town, and there's a small hardware store just down the block from my house, and I go there often, and as I've gone in there multiple times, we've built a relationship with the owner, who now greets me by name, asks me how the last project went. That personal touch has value. I feel more at home in his store than driving down to a big box store that may be a couple miles further down the road. And so therefore I prefer to go to his store, just because he shepherds me when I go into a store around, hey, this is probably where you want to go, because he's gotten to know me. I think as we look at this across the board, what we're seeing is people are comfortable providing information when they get a return from providing that information, when the experience is superior. They get frustrated when they provide information and we don't use it. And so I think, again, there's a right balance that we need to be able to embrace, specifically as it comes towards the generations that are coming online in terms of the Gen X, Gen Y consumers. Clearly, they've demonstrated a tolerance for sharing information in return for a much better experience.
But is that perception affected at all by the fact that one is a big box and the other is a local? Like, would they have that? Does that perception remain consistent when they go to a large hardware store and they have that?
Is that endemic to the model, or is that an artifact of perhaps the big box store deals with 10,000 customers a day, and so therefore it's difficult for them to build a one-on-one relationship? What about if they were empowered to do so? Would you say that I don't expect that relationship for a big box, or would you be thrilled and delighted if you had that relationship at a big box store? I think that if I could find that relationship and have the selection at a big box store, that would be ideal for me as a consumer.
But then how about protecting that data as well? Because we know that hackers, they love hotels because they have lots of credit cards, but they love every company that
That is anything.
involves with credit cards. Hotels have other data though. So what are some ways the hotels are protecting against data compromises, and how do you react once that happens? Because we've seen it to be almost inevitable at some point.
So I think security awareness is number one. So most hacks, as you go through the metrics, you'll see that have been caused by human error. Humans are involved in some shape, form.
Mm-hmm.
So awareness, security awareness and training is pretty big. I mean, in our company, we have an annual GM conference. We actually had a whole closing session on just awareness. And I think that's very, very critical. And to look at emails and you get all this spam and malware coming through emails. And in fact, even if you look at the data, a lot of these breaches have happened as a result of malware coming through email. So that's another big area of obviously there's technology, lots of technology being put in, some of the new innovation a lot of the innovation in AI and all is actually geared into the security industry. Some of the most sophisticated algorithms have been developed and tools to prevent, and detect and prevent hacking attempts and stuff like that. And then the second track is on response, right? So training the team on response is another track, because everyone says, what if it happens? How well are you prepared to respond? So you need your partnerships with your legal, with forensic teams and all of that. And I think most big companies are doing that, to have those ready to go in advance, have these exercises on a regular basis where you pretend you've been breached and how do you react to it, because that's another area where and there's no guarantee. Obviously there's no every incident is different, so there's no guarantee that you'll react perfectly, but training, I think, in all respects is key here.
I think also, again, number one, I think we need to recognize we're collecting the data, and it's a question of, are we going to do anything with it, right? So the question around is not, should we collect more data? The answer is, we're already collecting a tremendous amount of information today, and I think it's a question of how do we use that for the guest's benefit. I think as we also look at the information, obviously we want to make sure that we're not collecting any information that we believe would be a high-value target. Right, and so much of that information, frankly, never hits our systems. Right, and as we look at it, the highest value information for us is generally the lowest value information for a hacker, because ultimately we're looking for behavioral patterns and what's a guest going to expect, and that information is very low value to a hacker. Right, they're looking for things that they can exploit, and frankly, we try to keep that information out of our systems. But I think because security is essentially a brand question, first and foremost, there's no choice but to make it a top priority. I don't know that there's a choice in today's environment to not make it the highest priority of everything that we do. I think to the point made, it has to be essentially part of everyone's mindset that you don't do it if you can't do it securely. And I think that's a change that has happened within the industry, and we need to remain vigilant that we keep it at that same level of vigilance.
So, going back to the Beck's point, it's about education, because there is a tendency, for people to think, well, that must be somebody else's responsibility, when ultimately it comes back to the individual. So making sure that they are aware of the things that they do on a day-to-day basis, how they treat information, and then it's preparation, right? Making sure that they are prepared, because it's, what is the saying? It's inevitable, or you may have already been breached, you're just not aware of it, right? So those two things, I think, are at the forefront of how to prepare and deal with that.
And when you're giving people, and all the line level employees have to be accessible in a lot of different places, you're opening up your doors. If you don't have training in place, especially with email, because email tends to see, in our world, you see a lot of human error that just opens the systems up for problems. I think the brands dictate what we do with their systems, and the proprietaries of with independent hotels, we have to take the extra time to really look at that particular system that's going to be used and the interfacing of it, because Starwood and Marriott Hilton will all specify, and you follow, and you're pretty well covered, I would think, in those circumstances. And then at the independent properties, there's a lot more work to be done. You have to be really cautious.
So moving on a little bit to the mobile space, last year everyone was talking about keyless check-in, things like that. So what are some of the developments this year that are going on in the mobile space, and how are hotels kind of continuing to accommodate this gigantic mobile push? I mean, everyone's booking on mobile now, right? So what are some of the other new developments there?
I think you see a streamlined viewpoint. The websites have become much more simplified. They're very visually driven. They are very adaptable to a mobile phone, and even the booking engines. And we see this a lot in the independent properties have become very visual, less clicks. It's much easier to navigate than it used to be. And I think it continues to evolve, and it's just going to be easier for them because they see less information, but it takes them more direct to where they need to be. And then you've got the bullet points. And they kind of know what they are looking for. They've already done some level of homework, more than likely, before they even started using the mobile app, and getting the reviews and the feedback and so forth. So when they're on the app, they're probably very driven to what they need to do. And I think you see a lot cleaner mobile functionality now to make it a lot easier.
So it's that shift, that focus. I actually heard Bruce speak about this at a conference, that mobile is permeating everything.
Mm-hmm.
That in the old, I've been around long enough, I can speak to the old days. You thought about rolling out applications. Training was a big aspect of that, and the point that he made was mobile apps, there's no training with it. If they can't make sense of it immediately, they're not going to use it, and then there's repercussions associated with that. So we're actually seeing that as we're looking to refresh or go into the next generation of some of our long-standing business intelligence and reporting platforms, that it can't be about training. It has to be intuitive. You either have to be able to guide them through what you're expecting them to do, or it just needs to be that intuitive right out of the box, that there's not going to be an opportunity to train. In fact, if we have to train them, we probably miss the boat, right? It's not doing what we expect it to do.
I think mobile is table stakes for sure, right? For not just for guest facing, even for other applications, internally. I think the next phase is, and in mobile, just from it, it's going to keep changing. So there's it's just continuous innovation. You got to keep coming up with new releases. We built the platform 4 years ago. It's due for a refresh. So that's a given in that space. I think the next wave is voice is coming up big, right? So things like Amazon Echo and other voice, for especially older people are like kind of great use, because the technology again has matured. The intelligence, the response. I don't know if you've used Amazon Echo. It's faster than Siri in terms of how quickly. So Amazon's powering it with their big data, platform, that they can respond very quickly to requests. So it's become very natural interaction, and I think that's the next wave. Next wave of technologies that are going to come out there.
So I think the really interesting thing that's moving so incredibly fast is that as we understand more about mobile, we understand that it is maturing as its own channel. Because I think we used to think about it essentially as an extension of some other channels. And the reality is the use cases around mobile are different than web. And people use web tools for some things, and they expect to use mobile for different things. And a lot of other apps that have been out there are kind of pushing those boundaries. So we really kind of start seeing, well, what role really does mobile play in the future? And frankly, it's a different role than we probably think it's played in the past. And I think the really interesting thing is that mobile is so much more highly relevant for this industry, frankly, than a lot of others. Mobile is a convenience. For a lot of other industries. For us, it is absolutely critical, and I've come to rely upon my mobile device when I travel. That is my world. I no longer carry itineraries or day planners and all this stuff. It's all in my electronic devices, and so therefore it's not a convenience for me. It's not like I can sit down on my laptop as I'm walking through the airport or I'm in the cab. My mobile device is my world when I'm traveling, which is a large part of my job. So we see it as being a much larger opportunity for this industry than, for example, some other industries may see it. And so therefore, we need to invest accordingly in that, because ultimately we do believe that, and I love the comments of, I think we're just starting to scratch the surface around the role that mobile is going to play in our industry. And I think frankly, 3 years from now, it's going to do things that we didn't even think about today. in terms of the role that it's going to play in terms of both our employees on property as well as the guests.
And even the platforms are, I mean, I don't know about you guys, but between iOS and Android, and initially we started with a one platform, easier to manage, but I'm seeing such a dip because each company is innovating on its own track, and we're going to end up with split applications for those. It's kind of more of the same. And tools even within the covers, tools that we used 2-3 years ago are getting defunct, getting replaced by other tools. So that's one of my point about continuously investing in the platform because it's changing, but it's all for the good. I mean, ultimately you're improving your product kind of as the technology matures as well.